Hey folks, Nick Tockard here. Oh, wrong glasses. With the Historical Fencing Guild. Before we get into our program, we have to do some shout outs. First and foremost, we want to put a shout out to Independent Creator Directory. I would not be able to broadcast the many places that I do without the wonderful assistance I have and what I've received as a member of IndieCD.org. I am very proud of that. We are also made possible by sales of the Simple Sword, the Fighting Axe, and the Simple Spear, all part of our ongoing series of Western martial arts manuals designed to help you go from having never handled the sword to teaching the art to others. As well as my amazing patrons, the stout folks who bear with my quiet Patreon page because everything gets poured into the service here. The service here to help people learn and mature and grow through martial arts, regardless of age, regardless of value of wealth, of perceived value, of gender, of creed. For the last quarter of a century, across multiple groups in short and long-term versions, I have been teaching people how to sword fight. And the wonderful people who are listed at the bottom of the page they make this possible. Now, before we go any further in the broadcast, I need to explain something. Due to a shipment error, I missed one of my meds today. And it is the one that helps me deal with my ADHD. Well, ADD, you know the deal. While I did get it for tomorrow, I won't have it for today. And that is causing me just a little difficulty, along with receiving some news that was just a touch unsettling in the last few hours concerning some people I help. I will not be going into those details because they come under the categories of what I consider the paper collar clause. There is a measure of confidence that is required to do what I do. So I do apologize if any of my stammering or delays seem a little worse today. Thank you for your patience. I may end up, running out briefly to get a Mountain Dew or something to get it going. But with the way today's gone, I've had to take care of some things. So beyond that, I have some stuff that I need to discuss. I want to answer because it is very, very important, very valid to what I am trying to accomplish and why I've been doing it this way for so long. But first, I see some things. Ed here. Off in the Woods, Frog G, Ronald, Riehn, Brian, K, Morris, Blade, Thesis, Cindy Koepp, Steve Agosto, Don Dulas, Angelina, Vaquera-Linke, and I try to say her name as best I can. I hope she actually doesn't mind. Joe and Trilaina Bachman, Richard Asplund, and Kat Rothermel. You people are the saints that keep what we're doing alive. Okay? Plus, anyway, I may have accrued in the last few days. So we're going to go through. I will download and move this over to the Historical Fencing Guild channel. I hit the wrong button. And on setup, I reflexively set it up to the Nicholas Talker channel, which is not something I really wanted to do. So I'm going to admit my error there. But Oktoberfest, huzzah. Yes, train your sword slow. Sometimes that's how you have to. Evening, no HFG channel? No. Like I said, I made a mistake. I'm very sorry. Yeah, and that would be part of it. So it is late enough in the stream. I don't know. Can I add? I'm going to see if I can remove it. Oh, apparently I can only okay, no, I'd have to cut out one of the other streams, and I'm not moving you guys over there. I'm hoping they'll have the good sense to figure it out. Anyway, people ask me, why have I spent the last quarter of a century teaching people to sword fight? And why have I been teaching the people who are? Why are my students the ones I tend to work with? This question gets asked to me a lot. And it ties back to when I first started fencing in 2001, somewhere in there. I'd have to check the date. I want to say it was 01, but my first instructor decided I had promise and whatever, and he wanted me to start to help him with the newbies. So yeah, that fits. 01, that gives me time. Help him with the newbies, and he split the newbies into 2 groups. We had at that time 25 students come in, and what he did is he singled out every white male between 5'10" and 6 foot, and 1 female of height wasn't necessarily the measurements I think he was convinced were of interest, but the athletic types. And the remainders were left to me, as he put it, to see what you can do with these people. And I went, hey, cool. And most of them were women, a couple were minorities. At least one had physical limitations. But I was just happy to be helping people who wanted to learn to sword fight. And I trained them and then got them started, and I watched him train people. Because after a while, he wanted to recheck my students, and he made corrections and things. And I noticed things. I noticed that individual directly training flaws into people. Unfortunately, while I did find out which flaw he taught into me, it was very hard to, once you're first exposed to in martial arts, I'm sorry, I need to turn this off, is what will shape a lot of your original muscle memory. That's why I'm so very focused and anal about I work through the first practice, at least, with all the new students, everyone I've taken. And this has offended people. And it's not because the newer instructors at the time would not be able to do it, that they didn't have the full skill package. It's that they didn't understand the order of the curriculum and how vital it was. Because part of what I teach is built around the concept of there's some training wheels, okay? And you can keep using them for the entirety of your martial arts career, and they will not hurt you. But there are also more advanced styles that slowly erode and pull those away. And there are alternate styles, which if you study, you will be able to encounter. Now, that's part of why I do it. But the other part, going all the way back, was those were people, if he had his others, not others, he had his preferences, he would have he would have refused. He would have just said, be on your way. But he couldn't. So I was in a good position to deal with his discards. And part of the problem is the discards that I worked with beat a lot of his newer people, because I could look at the styles they fought and analyze and break down and go, here, if you do this, 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 and this, this is how they're killing you. This is how you're losing. Let's work on that. Or you have this limitation. Let's approach it. And a lot of notes, a lot of figuring, a lot of tacking. And as I have aged, I have noticed that, let my coffee out of the room. I've noticed that there is a lot of gatekeeping in not only historical fencing, but in martial arts as a concept. Now, there are a lot of great dojos out there. There are great schools you can learn any given martial art from, and I am not bashing them. But there are also a lot of McDojos out there that give false confidence, and a lot that turn into boys club, or we only work with the extremely fit, etc. And I've been working toward developing a system that, instead of being a gate, instead of blocking, is a ramp. It's to ease people in, because that's what's needed. And there are very specific tropes that I have opposed over the years that have gotten me in trouble with some people. The trope of the person who is just feeding absolute garbage to their students. The trope of, again, the tall boys club. You must be this tall and here. But another trope I've seen is it's almost like a multi-level marketing style where I'll train you, but if you pay me this much, I'll, give you the better stuff. And that really, really bothers me, because that's not right. So what we have to do is we have to realize that we live in a world where if you're going to engage in the world, you need to be able to analyze the world. You need to have the confidence to act in an emergency situation to your best efforts. And you need an adaptive system that is realistic to your personal capabilities. So that's what I've been working on. And that's what the simple sword is. That's what the fighting axe is. That's what the simple spear is. That's what the rapid rapier is going to be. And I still have to do the staff book, the strong sword, and a improvised weapon analysis book. I haven't even found a title for that one. But we're going to work into that. I'm always working in developing. So thank you for your patience on that. Martial arts are for everybody, but the people who have the most need for training are often the people with the least access to training. What that means is if you are impoverished, if you are in a poor community, you are more likely to encounter violence. If you are female, you are more likely to be targeted for violence. Both what we'll consider external and internal violence. And what I mean by that is, and I'm playing with terms, so just bear with me. External is, getting mugged on the way to work. Internal is boyfriend, uncle, dad, mom, some relative for whatever reason takes upon themselves to do bodily harm or attempt to do bodily harm onto you. It's just simply more common. That's why a woman walking to her car at night has an entirely different mental process than most men walking to their car at night. And there needed to be a system out there to just start giving them a groundwork. And towards the people who are interested more in Western martial arts versus Eastern. Because if you want to learn Eastern martial arts, guess what? There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of MIC dojos and real dojos and schools. And you can find great education very readily. Until incredibly recently, Western martial arts were relegated mostly to Olympic fencing and the SCA. There were a few saber schools I knew of, and if you could find them, if you knew where to dig, some Bartitsu organizations. But none of it really, finding really good stuff, and all of it was highly expensive. Thank you for swinging the band hammer, Joe. It needed to be done. And I do sometimes receive scolding at the literal simplicity of my training techniques and my style, forgetting that I'm about building a foundation. It's up to you how tall your tower goes and what shape it is. And I'm about helping you find your fight, because from there, that's how you'll decide it. But one factor that is not discussed enough, and frankly, right now really needs to be, is the factor of brevity. What do I mean? I have had students over the years, many of which had been in violent, oftentimes uh, sexual assaults. And they need to get their confidence back for two distinct reasons. One, the depression is deadly. And two, the threat could be ongoing or repeatable. Now, let's see. Would you say, I have no idea how to pronounce your call sign, GZ. So I'm going to say Goods Doctor Forever, maybe? Would you say there are two styles of martial arts? One is based around winning a tournament. One is for self-defense, sort of a John Kreese style versus Mr. Miyagi. And despite what the movie style say, both. Okay. I'm sorry, my dyslexia got me. Both are needed despite what the movie says. I would say there are three styles. And you make a valid point. And they are all radically different. Okay? There are combatives. There are sport martial arts, and then there's self-defense. When I say sport martial arts, I want to include in there, including the historical that are ranked not on your success but your form, because that is a type of sport. It is a very academic sport, but it's still a sport. So that can be anything from the high grade, we'll go down the line. Krav Maga is a combative style. MCMAP, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, combative style. The techniques as espoused by Fairbairn Sykes, the guy who developed the British commando dagger and its applications, combative style. I probably should give a fourth for the historical where you're trying to preserve and stuff, but I don't even consider that. That doesn't have the martial side of it. Combatives are intended for warfare. So their intent, a combative style's intent, is to quickly, efficiently neutralize the enemy, usually fatally. Okay? Another unpopular opinion I have in this line is the study of martial art of firearm use. The marksmanship schools of firearm use are no different in logic or approach than that of archery, than that of any of the ranged things, and that of any of the other more established martial arts. People want to break these up, and I see it as, is it something you train to use accurately and effectively to either do harm onto a person or person, object, or animal? Then it's probably a martial art. And anybody who thinks there isn't an art to the application of a firearm is mistaken. But getting all the way back to our topic, combatives. Okay, combatives are there to kill the enemy first. Obviously, survival is very good, but it's survival through destruction. Or your sport arts, and again, anything that is scored, are there to meet a supervised victory condition. So that is your boxing, your taekwondo, usually. Anything that you go to tournaments for in modern applications. MMA. And then you have self-defense. And the reason I separate especially combatives and self-defense is the condition. All this is about victory conditions. A self-defense martial art is something that is taught and drilled and trained to neutralize the opponent or enemy enough so that you can escape. Your primary goal in a self-defense minded martial art is your survival. And I would say it's to neutralize the threat and coming threats. So, if you do use a martial technique to defend yourself in a real world application, okay? You know, from we'll take any of the schools. We'll go the examples. Somebody who is, and this is a problem actually that makes the world very, very difficult for combat veterans in our country, because there is not enough deprogramming at all for our combat veterans. As a country, teach them to respond to threats with very specific deadly force to survive in warfare, but we do very little proportionately to unwind that spring that we have put inside them. And occasionally I've had the privilege and honor of helping deliberately teach them styles and responses to counter the programming. It can be very challenging. It is something that has to be done extremely carefully, but it's an approach. A combative trained person, so we're going to use the same scene, same scenario. There is a bar, okay? And in this bar, some big drunk guy comes up to you. Maybe he doesn't like the way you look. Maybe he doesn't like the color of your shirt. Whatever. And he attempts to assault you. Takes a swing, whatever. Somebody who is properly combative trained, given the situation, might just apply deadly force. As in, either take the punch or just dodge the punch, stab him in the armpit, and leave him there to die. And I hate to say it, but there are people who can do that. More likely, they take, again, dodge the punch. Maybe they destroy his knee as an opener. Face goes against the bar a couple times. He's down. Guy leaves. Problem is the guy's dead. That leaves you with the problem of now the police are looking for you. Now there's legal and there's civil issues. You can go to jail. You can lose your home due to a lawsuit. This is creating additional threats to your life and livelihood. So that's one school. Now, the sports schools, and these are all formidable. I am not speaking down about them. I'm speaking about understanding using the right tools in the right situations and the problem with any of them. The problem I find most with the the standard martial arts that people are taught, that I've encountered, is they are devastating. And you pick any of them, against a single opponent. One-on-one, that is against somebody who's untrained, you're just going to be a bully. You're just going to devastate them. But what I have found, and one of the first things I teach any of my students, and I'm the only person I have ever heard of who really does this, I teach every one of my students from the perspective of, we are doing classical fencing. It is light. There is always another 7-letter word that ends with hole. And I do this because, one, I don't swear often. So when I do, people tend to notice. That's conveniently why I don't swear often. And two, I have seen too many times where physical altercation blows up in numbers. Not at all. Not at all. Great noticer. I train white people. I train black people. Okay. You are white? Oh, okay. One moment. This happens every so often, guys. I'm going to run commercial for just a second. So don't, I don't know if I can. Let me see. Well, there we are. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I have no tolerance. I believe, getting back to it, that cowards travel in packs, and the kind of people who jump others the vast majority of time are usually men, not always, but usually men. They're usually uncomfortable in their life, but feeling superior about other things. And they don't fight with any level of honor. They are very unfair. And a great many of the schools that, especially your grappling-based schools, that are taught, yes, absolutely, if a grappler gets a hold of you individually, they will do great harm. However, it is very hard for somebody who's primarily a grappler to deal with multiple opponents. So when things are running, and we are kind of at a stall due to some site-based issues right now and the weather, I train people to expect unexpected things. This means when they have been taught to a skill level, and this is beyond learning how to fight. Okay, I've taught them the basics. They know what they're doing somewhat. Maybe they picked up a style or two. Now I'm going to start throwing weird stuff at them. I'm going to have quietly signal another opponent to come in the ring while they're not looking. I'm going to have people switch weapons up on them. Sometimes I will bring unexpected threats, e.g. live fire Nerf exercise, where I'll just randomly I'll get it within their front arc where they should be able to see me usually, and I'll just pop a Nerf dart at them just to see if they're paying attention to their surroundings. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, but I throw darts. The point is understanding to train against multiple opponents, but only having one is far better than understanding only how to fight one and suddenly having multiple. It is a problem. Now, in the event that a one-on-one fighter engages in a self-defense thing, they leave themselves vulnerable to additional assailants, and they also leave themselves vulnerable because they are trained to hold the choke till they tap out. And if a lot of times if the adrenaline is going, it's very easy to go too far. Likewise, in all these physical approaches, there is the chance of just goofing up and killing somebody. One guy takes a swing at you, you pop him, just beautiful single punch. He staggers back, trips, bangs his head, and dies. It happens all the time. So then we come down to martial arts training for self-defense. And when you're training for self-defense, the mentality is not, I have no time for superheroics. Okay? Your first goal is survival. That means first huge lessons on prevention. I want to teach you to be situationally aware. My goal is to take people like me who have hypervigilance and teach them to narrow it down to a manageable level of vigilance, and people who are not trained in that to expand to having vigilance from not being aware. Hey, some person. This is a very important mindset because it allows for not putting yourself in the situations where you would need any of the skill sets we're trying to help you develop. At the same time, I am using martial arts and the lure of want to learn to sword fight, especially again for young ladies and people with physical limitations, to build confidence, capability, and very specific type of physical development. So we're going to go down to self-defense. Self-defense is going, first off, why am I at a bar? Bars are stupid places. I mean, I hate to say it, but very often they are. If you're at a bar, you're aware, and if you see a peg that, hey, that big guy's kind of schnockered and he's staggering looking to come over here, I just won't be here when he gets there. You get what I'm saying? Another thing, and I've heard it referred to as tak no jutsu. Quite possibly the best martial art you could ever develop. A gentleman came to like an MMA gym I was watching. And I've watched this video in different places. I can never remember his name. I would love to. So I'm only not crediting him because I can't remember his name at the moment. But, develop ways to respond. Hey, you looking at me? Yeah, I love your shirt, man. Where'd you get it? Because when someone engages a threat or is planning to engage in violence, oftentimes they have a sort of script they are expecting. And usually it's only one or two things. And usually people overinflate their ability to act. So the kind of person who starts something doesn't usually think that it's going to go negative for them, because if they did, they wouldn't start it. They expect you to be scared, or they expect you to rise to the bait so they have an excuse to knock you down. But if you can sidestep it verbally, compliment them, do something, a lot of times you can diffuse a situation before it's a situation. And it is a perfect mirror to, if you're doing combatives, you are vast majority of time the predator. You are looking to seek out the enemy and destroy them. So you're looking to manufacture opportunities of advantage. In self-defense, it is, and I admit it freely, it is more of a prey-based mentality. And the reason I am saying that is, if you are a smaller person, if you are a female presenting person, if you are somebody with a disability, one of the real things we have to realize is we do present to certain mentalities as prey. There is a vulnerability there. Now, understanding that, we are obligated for our own survival to acknowledge some truths and understand what we're building up from. Now, and I don't want to scare people, but that is the reality we live in. And when you go and you're learning to sword fight, especially from the system I teach, it is escapism, okay? It is a way to turn off a lot of things that go on in your mind and just focus on this. It forces you to become aware of your surroundings. It teaches basic body movement. And this is something that drives me bonkers. I believe physical education should educate the individual who's doing so. It shouldn't be about, well, you should be able to do this many push-ups. That's like the test taking. Or you should be able, here, play games, see who wins. Now, you need to teach people how to work with their body and address their issues, which is why the most important thing that I teach outside of situational awareness is footwork. And I teach the same basic footwork to everybody. And a lot of advanced students get annoyed because I follow certain rules. And one of those rules is you're not going to cross your legs, because if you cross your legs, you're liable to fall over. So we're going to talk about how we move. Okay, I'm taking vast quantities of movements away, and we're putting it in the simplest concept I can. Wow. I'm going to call you Dr. Forever because it's the GZ is throwing me off. In fencing, is there an advantage to being left versus right-handed? Do you teach both hands? Do you incorporate weightlifting to help with a fast fencing strike? Excellent questions all across the board. Part of it, first off, I do have to say it depends on the individual, because everything I do is individually tailored. Everything I suggest is individually tailored. So, needs things. But I do, because I teach classical fencing, which means, I probably should explain, it is based on techniques found from, technically, I mean, you could go all the way back to the early Middle Ages and go all the way through the Renaissance and into the 1800s. But I tend to orbit around a large part the 1550 to about 1800. So you're going to find rapier, small sword, saber, things like that, primarily. Do I train broadsword? Absolutely. Broadsword is part of that, actually. I am not overly fond of great swords, but we do have participants and we do train in that because it does work with some people's body styles and such. That being said, every time I teach somebody, I encourage to the point of being a nuisance. You're going to drill everything both-handed. Because when you're first learning, if you drill both-handed, you will be at least mostly ambidextrous. Is there an advantage in classical fencing if you have a single blade and you are fighting left-handed against right-handed? What you have is the advantage of the angles that are used feel radically different than if it's right by right. I mean, if you think about it, instead you're fencing against a mirror instead of cross-body. That changes a lot of the dynamics. You also have some shots that are very difficult to anticipate if you're not used to fighting lefties. There's a reason they were called sinister, and there's a reason why some people consider left-handed people to be witchcraft or demonically involved. Because, amongst other things, sword fight-wise, you could do things, and you didn't play by the same rules as everybody else. So I absolutely encourage ambidextrousness as much as physically possible on the field. Now, because I am primarily right-handed because I was forced to be, but I have a tremendous amount of right-handed damage to my right hand. I am ambidextrous, but my right hand is more of a rapier, and my left hand is more of a saber. Plus, when I make my fists, as you can see, I'm one of 5% of population. This is a male fist. The knuckles are flat. This is a traditional, let me relax into it, a traditional female fist. The knuckles are angled. This greatly affects what a comfortable grip feels like because, give me a second, and I will grab this could be any sword stick. Cool. I grab a sword naturally right-handed. You see this angle, okay? It's a 30 to almost 45 degree difference from when if I grab it naturally left-handed. This affects what kind of shots are able to be thrown. So not only am I mostly ambidextrous, but I'm inclined to fight one style, one the other. I am a dual weapon fighter whenever possible. I enjoy it. Practicality and survivability, I'm looking probably for a strap shield. Maybe a buckler, but I really do like a good strap shield. Which, my preferred weapon is a nice dagger, something in the vicinity of a mangouche, and then a cup hilt rapier. I'm very fond of cup hilt rapiers. Technically, my favorite weapon is the Spanish Bilbao. This is an example. This is a live steel example. It has a rapier-style grip. Usually this would be much broader blade. It is short. It's about 24 inches long at the blade. And it has very distinctive, extremely covering guard. Now, there we go. This was very popular in the Spanish colonies, now known as Mexico. This is in 1873, I think, was the Carlos the Third. It's either the third or fourth. Carlos the Fourth rapier. This sword is very popular. However, because it was named after the city, or is largely known after the city from which it hails, being a Bilbo, it is very difficult to look up without getting swarmed with things involving Lord of the Rings. And I have a trainer of Bilbo's Stig over there, which is one of my favorite weapons, don't get me wrong, but I adore that. If I had a brace of those that were combat ready, I would dance a jig, and I'm actually in negotiations to try to get Purple Heart Armory to develop one. And if they are of the right cost, I will buy many of them. Now, do I incorporate weightlifting to help with fast fencing strikes? This is where it goes from how I taught myself and how I train versus the students I work with. I am more focused on calibration than speed or power for what we do. And calibration is being able to move at full speed from any position and strike your opponent doing little to no damage because you are fencing with them. I don't want to actually run through. Many years ago now, I was in a group called the Society for Creative Anachronism. I was teaching rapier, and I had been working with one of my friends, a dear gentleman by the name of Jason Leto. And we were in a fencing bout. And as you mentioned, Leto's left-handed. Well, he is left-handed, and very primarily so. We both did a lunge. And I realized we were doing a double lunge because there's no right-of-way. And I made a mistake in that I was in teacher mode and I was more concerned with not hurting him than defending myself, which is something as an instructor you can't do. But as I realized, I went, shoot, I'm going to hurt him. Reflexively, I took my sword offline and I did not parry hard enough. His came in because we both were doing a classic lunge, step into the long shot. It, instead of hitting and deflecting, it actually caught my sternum between the ribs and ripped 5 of the sternum away from 5 of my ribs and cracked 3 of them. And I didn't notice. I knew my chest hurt. And I was winded all day. I couldn't figure it out. Till the next day when I went to operate a Hoyer lift to help my mother-in-law when she had fallen, and I blacked out briefly from pain. Went to the doctor's office, and they x-rayed me and basically duct taped me up and said, okay, you're going to drive yourself to the ER because I don't want to wait longer. You're going to go slowly. When your doctor literally asks you, have you invited Jesus Christ into your life? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Good, that'll make this easier. And he put like KT tape to try to keep things from moving and sent me to get my x-rays. And what happened is I had one rib had dislocated and was poking my lung. And when they put me on the ER in the ER, when they put me to the x-ray, they rolled to get me to get the x-ray in position, and there were several sickening loud wet 2x4 noises, and my ribs realigned themselves. I still had a bunch of cracked ribs and I was in absolute misery, but I wasn't in fatal issue. It's part of why I'm very big on chest protection. That being said, when I was teaching myself and I was actively competing, I not only did basic calisthenics every day, I did my drills, so going through the motions from the system I was developing at the time, with weighted bags on my wrists and ankles. I think I got up to 3-pound weights, 3 or 5. I think it was 3 on the arms and 5 on the legs from way back. I also, I used to do my drills with a crowbar because I wanted the extra weight. Now, I overdid it quite a bit, and I do not know if that contributed to some of the issues I have now, so I don't recommend it. But I was in high school, and I was I was in college, sorry. I was in college, and I was a very different kind of person than I am now. and of a very different health. So we had a lot of it. It is not hard to throw a hard shot with a thrusting weapon. It is not hard to throw a hard shot with a concussive weapon. It is remarkably easy because leverage is your friend in the concussive weapon. So if I am smacking you, a blow, pop. Okay. That is going to be the force multiplier. With a thrusting weapon, the force multiplier is very often your body weight behind it and the mechanics of your shot. So, for example, if you look into Italian fencing, very much you extend and then you step and then you go for a lunge. If you look at Spanish fencing, you start out very extended, almost at complete extension. But your footwork comes offline and your blade stays relative, so it disguises the advance. If you combine both of these, so if you use Spanish footwork with Italian or German blade work, or French for that matter, you're going to have all your body weight and a thrust. Calibration becomes very difficult to manage. But the only way to accomplish, to work through and work past that, is to pick one, basically, and train in it constantly, because safety is the primary in what we teach. I hope that answered your questions. I got some I love questions. And all of my stuff, I am doing a little bit of self-promotion here, but literally, you can get the basic guide. There is going, probably next year, I'm going to hunker down and do a revision on this, because it's been a decade since I published The Simple Sword. But this covers almost everything you've heard me talk about, and all the combat is in, all the discussions are in stick figures, so that you can understand the guards, understand footwork. Very clear, very easy to assess. I do hope that that was of service to you guys. Now, if you have any other questions, please fire away. There's a wonderful Facebook group. You look up the Historical Fencing Guild, and I forgot to put my boot up all this time. You look for that boot, usually. Historical Fencing Guild public group. Join on. Great people, wonderful opportunities to discuss things and do what we do. Now, if the next thing people ask us, well, what's the practicality in teaching with rapiers? I teach with rapiers because it teaches the most control. It teaches the most awareness, the safest both on the student and their opponent. Because when you're working with somebody who's never handled the sword, they can actually be very dangerous because they don't know how dangerous they're being in a training setting. Once that, I encourage my students to expand to other related weapons. That being parry daggers, bucklers, second swords, rigid parry devices, so maybe sticks, more elaborate things, hand axes, And then once you have the control built, once you have the control and maturity built, then I teach other styles from things. Okay. Now, first off, I rarely teach children because of liability issues. And I do not, nor have I ever charged for what I do. There are rare exceptions, but I very rarely teach anyone under the age of 18 for safety. You can. I mean, my thing is I can teach my system with any object, what we call SSO, a sword simulating object. So, this is a wonderful example of a sword simulating object because it's obviously not a sword. It's a chunk of PVC with a nice grip that I put together with, I want to say, athletic tape and some spare paracord. But so is, sword simulating object is also this big old honkin' Nerf sword. Also, hold on. This rather beat up steel rapier with a saber blade. This is my short blade. I quite like this. All my old weapons that I fought with are going to be basically retired. If I go back to steel, I need to start from scratch due to the age and safety. Or polypropylene weapon like this. Many others. It doesn't matter the hold on. The material. If a lightsaber is what gets the kids excited, I'll teach them basically with a lightsaber. But the motions are still the same. The style doesn't care. This is one of my specialized canes. I made this cane, and I may be putting I'm working on designing a head for it, but this is my straight stick, and let me move this. This was designed as a training implement for me personally, in that most of the concussive weapons I prefer tend to be shorter. So this gives me a 24-inch blade, roughly 24, 26, depending on how I'm grabbing. But I can feel it. So this is very good for training one-handed or two-handed techniques. And it doesn't care. I can do a kendo strike. I can wheel like I'm doing Meyer. It doesn't care. But this lets me know instantly this is gripped in such a fashion that I can strike that way. Now, if we come down to this point, you'll notice this little slightly rounded area. I made this because that puts me at a 30-inch blade, which mirrors the rapier I just put, and I can use this to practice rapier techniques with the same basic tool. If this were a lightsaber blade, I could teach the same techniques. There is some slight variance with blade alignment and how parries work, but I work on enough to make the weapon style go, because making the weapon style go is what they need. They need a basis. I don't teach with the intention of secret mastery. I will make you the master of this style or that stuff. No, I teach essentially the Historical Fencing Guild's style that it teaches, which is the organization I run, is for a newbie, for somebody starting out who hasn't got a background in much of anything, is what we're doing. And that is essentially elementary school. Elementary to like high school as an approach. If you're looking at it with the larger education system as a parallel. After that, you could stay. You could do perfectly good with what you learn there and go to different groups and do things and have a wonderful time. catering it to the conventions or rules of the given organization. Now, if you want to learn a specific style, then you can take it and go further, and it will change what you do from the foundation. But I find usually if I put a sword anywhere near a young person, a sword trainer, when I do demos, I do demos at a library fairly frequently. I will do some more as soon as I can line up with some of the other members. I would then go and it attracts them. Anything you do with swords can attract anybody. And then I say, okay, what are you interested in? Oh, let's say I'm interested in greatsword or a broadsword. Okay. If you're looking for broadsword, there are a couple options we can use. Very late period techniques we can look into. There's some very nice English and German broadsword techniques. Riding cavalry saber, for example, has a very short arc of learning to functionality. You can learn it relatively quickly compared to other styles. All the numbers are different, but it also permits development in that direction. Now, I have learned some katana, different styles and approaches with it. Anybody who sees me sheath a sword knows I trained in the very Japanese way of doing it. I have a good friend, it's actually his birthday thesis, and that style, he always scolds me because I sheath Chinese swords in the Japanese style, but I've been sheathing the swords the same way for a very long time, and that's a habit that's not going to break. It's safe, it functions. I'm quite fond of it, and I haven't severed my fingers off. So we're calling that a win. But yeah, lightsabers are great. It's always whatever gets the attention. Now, the other purpose of the Historical Fencing Guild is to promote cross-training between disciplines. So what we do is we have our conventions, our rules, and this way I can get people to come out to our practices when we are active, and we can fight greatsword versus rapier. We can fight katana versus dual hand axes, or Viking axe slash. One of my favorite styles to fight is actually basically camp axe, because it's one of the first weapons I learned how to handle for self-defense. I had a very rural living situation and a very urban education due to where I was, so my worlds were very wire crossy. And there are certain things I'm just intimately comfortable with, and one of them is a variety of felling axes. To this day, one of my favorite, if I were to grab a self-defense tool, what's called a boy's axe is one of my favorites. It's lighter, it's a little shorter. I'm a fairly short guy. I'm between 5'5" and 5'7", depending on my joint alignment. I have certain issues. But that is, once I teach this basic style that works with the start of anything, yes, I bring out. One thing I do is when I have new students or it's been a while, many people collect live steel, and I have no small amount of live steel, but I have a vast quantity of training swords. I've helped design training swords. I've commissioned training swords. I've made my own training swords of everything from wood lath to high density polyethylene, HDPE. Because one thing that keeps people out of learning what we do is budget, which is why I openly and freely expound on so many of my styles here, because I want people to have a good and healthy education. I don't. Okay, that's a great. The sword that Cloud from Final Fantasy wields, a Buster Sword, is that based on something similar or just creative license? Creative license. There are large swords, but there was one kind of a legendary, essentially a horse killing sword. It's gigantic, that exists, and a couple essentially oversized odachis that exist. So while Cloud's is mostly fantasy, there are elements you could see what they tried to take it from, and they just blew it up to insane proportions. Now, Sephiroth's, let me see. I think it's in this closet. Oh, no, it's out here. 1 second. I'm still here. Yeah, Sephiroth's is based on an Odachi. I happen to have a variant Odachi trainer. I say variant because it does not have a Subo. But this is my Odachi trainer. This was put out by Purple Heart Armory. Link should be in the description to Purple Heart Armory. But let me see if I can get it in camera. This on me is a very lengthy weapon. And an Odachi, a Nodachi, is basically the version of a real Masamune. I think there's a great legend of Murasame and Masamune, which were competing Japanese swordsmiths, and I encourage you to look it up because it's fun. But now this I can absolutely use, and I have used with great finesse and style. I am rather fond of something called a nagamaki, where a nagamaki would have a hilt. Think of a katana, and if a regular katana is roughly this long, but it overall, but this much is hilt. This much is where you can grab, which gives it a tremendous amount of leverage. There's a buddy of mine and a rather famous YouTuber by the name of Sword Sage put a nagamaki in my hand many, many, many moons ago when he was a representative for a sword company. I don't know if he still is, but he had me that, and I was supposed to get a Lifesteal one from him, and it never happened. One of these days, I'm going to get one, though. That being said, most of the dramatically oversized weapons are creative license. It's interesting that battle axes, what we think of a battle axe in fantasy, and again, I have a trainer that looks like it, it's just not in the room right now. The double-headed would not be very practical at all because that's a lot of weight to swing and to swing quickly. Most of your actual battle axes had heads shaped more like this. And this is actually, ironically, my mouse hawk. This is one of my throwing axes, technically a tomahawk. They refer to it as a mouse hawk because it's a little smaller than most. I got this from the Missouri Knife. I think it's the Missouri Knife Company. Ironically, the cheapest place I found this was on the shelf at Bass Pro Shop in near Portage, Indiana. but they'd have the full-length head and a relatively small, perhaps a bearded axe blade, because you have to be able to move it very quickly. You don't need the weight as much as the speed and leverage. I'm actually quite fond of axes because as a practical individual, I believe that weapons should have another reason. I'm far more likely to carry a tool and be able to use it as a weapon than prefer to carry something that is solely a weapon. My knife, for example, my preferred knives, well, actually, my preferred knife is this. This is a CRKT Minimalist. The blade's a little slicey because this is the clip point Bowie blade, and as you can see, I've used the heck out of this, so it's a little scratched up. But it also, I wore the little dangly string off recently. But this is a tool. Could I defend myself with this? Yes, it's a knife. But this is primarily a tool I use to open boxes. I whittle and carve with it, other things. But because it's something I carry, I am fairly trained in its application. I mean, I also carry a lighter like this to start barbecues. And if you don't think I've ever thought, well, if things went wrong and I could reach it, I could then, punch somebody with fire. That would not be pleasant, but my mind is always spinning around these scenarios. You can, understanding the improvisation of everyday objects as self-defense tools is something I've developed. Can I get it through the TCA? No. I can't get my knife through, but I should be fine getting something like my little walking stick or my large walking stick through. I can't remember what the length requirements are, but because of my wrist damage, I prefer to walk with a walking stick, literally a hiking staff kind of thing, just about everywhere I go. I think that's self-explanatory. But yes, I could easily take something like this as my walking stick and get through TCA, I would imagine, just fine. It is not concealed. It is not removable. It is a solid piece of wood with a foot on it. I have to double check. And that's part of the thing. I like to look at when we talk about, let's talk about Cloud Sword. Let's say you trained with Cloud Sword. Cool. In what circumstances will you have access to Cloud Sword? In what circumstances will you get a great sword? Now, I actually have gone into greatsword training more than I like to admit because I can use greatsword techniques with my walking stick because it's not full bow length. It is about here. So it's around shoulder on me. It would be considered a Joe staff if you've ever heard of those. And again, may or may not go through TSA. I'd have to look at all the standards far ahead. The shops that make replica swords, do they incorporate a sharpener inside your sheath, or do you sharpen it old school with a stone? Almost all that I know do not include a sharpener. So you want to sharpen it with an old school with a stone. Although I am of the school you sharpen once, you stroke forever. So the vast majority of time, if you put a proper edge on a knife and you were keeping it sharp, you can sharpen it with something like a leather strap and have it functional. Although this is a work knife. This is a fairly hard steel. I think it's listed. Where is it? Anyway. So I can sharpen this with any softer metal and it will sharpen it. So very often I will sharpen this on whatever metal object I have handy that I don't care about. And of course, whetstones, I have one somewhere around here. I can use and sharpen it. And I keep it, because this is my work knife, I keep it, EDC, very sharp whenever possible. The other problem is a lot of the replica swords aren't, quote-unquote, battle-ready. they're not sturdy enough to use for that, so they're more likely to break when you if you are to apply them, which is why I prefer tool-based. If I'm going to go for an edged weapon in self-defense or planned self-defense, again, I'm going to first go with something that makes sense for me to have. And this rig is not the rig of somebody who is terribly, hyper masculine, looking for trouble. I do find that the very visual nature of this has repelled a few threats that would have people who would have caused trouble, but I don't. I don't have it now. If I'm hiking in the woods, I'm liable to carry an axe. I'm liable to carry, a knife that's much more aggressive, like this. This knife actually saved my life once. I used to carry it. If you look, you can see that this was my pencil sharpener for years because the paint has been damaged by the graphite. But this is an Ontario, it's the Air Force style K-bar, so it's the mini K-bar. Fit my hand better than the big one. And they were clearancing it off at a store that closed down. They didn't even have a proper sheath for it, and I've carried this thing for years. It's just very heavy, and that's not comfortable. I showed my mouse hawk. I sometimes carry that if I'm going out in the woods. I mentioned, hold on, because I end up having to demonstrate and discuss things, so I have a lot of things around me. This is a boy's axe. I do not want to risk dropping the head onto my digital display. Got this at Menards for like $15. 2.5 pound head, or 2.25 pound. I should get that as a 1/4 pound. Totally valid for almost any camping style axe application, but the difference is the handle is longer than a hatchet, so it is safer. I also can, again, if I have to defend myself, I can defend myself much better with something like this than I could with simply a hand axe. Simply because it's going to give me a lot more reach and a lot more power. Now, I can short shank it, sure, but this is something I'm intimately acquainted because my parents, my whole life, have heated their house with wood, or almost my whole life. And when you are a young man, you spend a lot of time falling trees that are dead, and you spend a lot of time splitting wood, and you spend a lot of time doing what you need to do. So this is a bit of a, how do I want to put it, a adaptation. I switched to this because I have developed nerve damage in my hands and arms and legs, a type of neuropathy, and a type of paralysis in my lower back and thighs, hips and thighs. And part of that means I can't, my weight tolerances, the musculature can handle it, but the nerves will react poorly. I also have hypermobility of the joints now, and so the joints won't hold up as well as the muscles will. I have to be careful what I use, how I use it. A shock becomes very important. So I've spent my life developing adaptive techniques for students. Why would I not then use those adaptive techniques for myself? And I apologize. I normally do this on my Historical Fencing Guild channel for the YouTube folks. I basically messed my my setup up, and that was due to just not having the right medication at the time and a bit of a low blood sugar, I suspect. However, I believe if you're going to train to handle one quote-unquote sword worldwide, as much as I love rapiers, and I do, and as much as I love certain types of broadswords, and I do, and small swords and all these other wonderful things. Practically, sword-wise, the best thing you can be comfortable with is a machete, a roughly 2 foot long chopping weapon, primarily chopping weapon, preferably with a D guard, at least, to protect your knuckles. Because the machete is, while the katana might be the most popular recognized sword in America, ironically, the machete is undoubtedly the preferred long knife / long sword weapon across the board. They're all over the place because they're just too practical. And a lot of period weapons, you're looking at Dusseks, you're looking at falchions. A lot of those German hunting swords are all very fancy period versions of essentially machetes. So if you're looking for a weapon to understand, the machete is a really good generalist, especially if you're looking for a concussive weapon to understand. I classify weapons into about 5 groups. Tiny weapons, up to 1 meter, up to 2 meter mass weapons, and large knives. Because almost all weapons fall into these categories. Anything else is kind of a special thing. And understanding that lets you understand their applications. As for my personal fighting styles, I probably should talk about that since we've got a new person and it's been a while. The vast majority of my preferred sword fighting does come from Italian and Spanish masters. I've read dozens and dozens of manuals, and I use them like a buffet. I take what I like and I leave the rest. My favorite go-to has to be Gigante. Gigante Sicile is a necessary read. Yes, Joe, I coming on, I set it up for the wrong channel. I'll probably end up downloading and resetting it to the other channel. But I've gotten some really good people tonight, so I'm not going to complain too much. Thank you for catching that, though. It's been a night. So, let's see. Anyway, my style primarily is that. Now, what I've been exposed to. First weapon I would consider myself comfortable with would be a splitting maul, which is the love child of an axe and a sledgehammer, because that's how I primarily made my money as a teenager. Literally was a splitting maul. I split wood to earn a living, and axe variants, so hatchet. That I got into training with Boken because I found a book, and staff, although I found myself drawn to Joe staves instead of bow staves, again for comfort and walkability. Plus, a Joe staff is far closer to a broomstick. You're far more likely to find a broomstick than you are a full-leg staff. So understanding the difference is probably a good idea. And then rapidly we start getting into the swords. Did a very small amount of Olympic saber, just enough to pick up some bad habits for when I crossed into the SCA, where I deep dove and fell in love with the rapier. Long daggers, paired anything, sword and buckler, sword and cloak, sword and stick. And during this whole arc, I was doing archery, air rifles, a few other things. I picked up staff a bit later. Really, again, I revisited it, and got into some katana work because what happened is I would cross-train with people. And so I picked up a remarkable amount of things from a gentleman by the name of John Miner, of the non-rapier variety. So a lot of Korean-influenced stick and body work. The problem is John Miner happens to be built like Hagrid, and I'm built more like Harry Potter, just fat now. So Hobbit Potter, if you will. But I went from there to I ended up running with a gentleman. His handle online is Sword Sage, so I don't want to dox him. And he was learning different styles. And what would happen is he would go and he would train in, say, Wing Chun for a while. And he learned Wing Chun, and he'd come out and we would go through a sort of ritual just about weekly where he'd come out, hey, this is what we're learning today. And he'd do a move. And first he'd show me, and I would, provide, no resistance at all. And then the second time he would go through, and I would provide some resistance without a counterattack. And then the third time we would be free sparring, and his goal was to incorporate the move and make it hit. And my goal was to catch the move and defeat it. And we did a lot of work back and forth. And because his early stuff was Wing Chun, I picked up a lot of pieces of Wing Chun. I trained with. That's when that's where I picked up a lot of my Jin fighting. Don't tell thesis. I've done more than a small amount of actual Jin fighting. I just don't like it. Rapier is my home, and short sword is my home. So I'm very efficient, dialed in on what I do. So that's what I do. Beyond that, like I said, I hit SCA, started training and cross-training. A lot of what I got came from John Miner's heavy weapons approach. And then once I was active in the FCA, I fought with a lot of good people that I learned a lot from. My first person I considered Swordmaster, even though we had personal falling outs later, Dennis Yakis, Aiden McDougall. I learned so much from that man. And Jody and Bob Houghton, I learned a tremendous amount from that man. Man and woman, a married couple, obviously. More from Jody than Bob, actually. My first instructor, who I will never name, because he doesn't even deserve the right of infamy. Then whatever fencers came around or whatever heavies wanted to dabble, we trained, we talked. I wanted to learn how to use shields better. And the fencers were very direct present, buckler, small motion, let's go. And I'm watching and I'm looking at the center bosses going, that's the same thing. So I just walk over and thump on the heavy's helmet and cross the line, so to speak, and go, hey, how you make go? Show me how you use this. And that they almost converted me to spear fighting with them. I quite like spear fighting. I quite like glaive work. Okay. Are there cross guards made on swords that act as a secondary weapon in the clinch, like we saw on Kylo Ren's lightsaber? Okay. You hit a delightful question, and I love questions like that. I really wish I had my personal rapier, which I have moved for safety, and I do not see it. So I will pick a less elaborate rapier. I see weapons, but we'll grab this guy for a second. Actually, no. I really wanted something with Williams. no, those won't work. Gotta find my rapier. I'll put it safe. But okay. For me, to answer your question, the entire sword is a weapon. What does that mean, especially on something that's rigged to be concussive? This, my rapier, which, again, I have put away someplace safe. I think it's in the closet over there, has a knuckle duster. So we'll just use this as a knuckle duster. But you would absolutely punch with, if you are in the bind, you can punch with the knuckle duster. You can pommel strike. I was very fond of pommel parries. Do not unscrew and throw your pommel to end them rightly. No, don't do that. But so if I do a shot, end up doing a big parry like this, I am totally comfortable coming in and smacking with the pommel. It's just not as safe to do in most training circles, and most schools don't teach it, because that is where classical fencing really starts to meld over into a combative, which is what it was in its period. So any weapon that has quillions or crossguard could be used that way. I mean, if you think for a minute, it's not much of a crossguard. It's rather short, but I wouldn't punch somebody in a clench with this if that seemed like the best opening. It doesn't need, especially against unarmored opponents, it doesn't need to be that fancy to be dangerous. So absolutely, this is very much a wall hanger. I would never fight with this unless I had no other option, but I wouldn't expect it to last long. However, it's my favorite sword, so I really don't want to do that. That's why I want one of these, both in steel rapier and in battle ready lifestyle. Actually, like 2 of them. A brace would make me a very, very happy man. And then a matching parry dagger, maybe a stiletto, something offhand fun. But yes, any of the cross guards could be used that way. To the point where you have murder strokes where I really need to switch which trainers I have available for discussion. But if this were a great sword, I am in limited space. But pommel strike, absolutely. That actually kind of stung when I did it to myself. I don't know if that makes me strong or weak. But pommel strike, hitting with the quillion. But I mean, it's much better if you have a knuckle guard. If it's longer, sure. The problem is, a lot of times it's used the sword as a sword. That's what it's good for. That being said, with the great swords, especially knights in armor who had, these weapons were not razor sharp the way we think, because they were for battering armor more than not. So you could flip it and actually turn it into a hammer, which would be considered a murder stroke. And because it wasn't terribly sharp and you were wearing, leather line, maybe chainmail mitts, you could do this all day. The problem is it's still better to use a sword as a sword. So I hope that answers that question. While this should not affect the Twitch and Kick viewers, this is a the Historical Fencing Guild is a it's usually broadcast on the YouTube channel, and I hate that people are misinterpreting my logo. So I will be doing a video about what the logo's about again real soon. But this is normally an hour program, and I am an hour 40 into it. Honestly, I need to get something to eat soon. So, guys, I want to thank you for your time. GZ Dr. Forev. I hope this has been educational and entertaining for you. Sometimes we have fighting practices, but I don't usually live stream actual practices because, ironically, it's too easy to have like a car drive by and the audio pick up something copyright. So I can't really live stream practices. But I do pre-record them for when we frequently have them, and they should be picking up soon because it's cool enough to have them. It's just I am very busy this month working conventions. For example, I will be making an appearance in Fowler, Indiana, as part of helping out with the library program during Flannel Fest. So you can come out and support the shenanigans, have a good time out there. At the Benton County Public Library in Fowler, Indiana, on 102 North Van Buren Street, Van Buren Avenue, sorry. October 11th, I will be taking part of a little tiny fun author book convention called Library Con that is held in the basement. Right now, we have 3 vendors this year slotted in. Myself, Brian K. Morris, and Carl and Donna. Donna, Carlene, and Carl Witzman, who are married. And we'll be selling books, and I will be selling discounted used Nerf blasters to help fund my program, which is Blasters for Books, where people who participate in the summer reading program at the end of it have the option to take part and receive free Nerf blasters that I have thrifted, repaired if necessary, and donated. I've been doing this for 3 years. I think this is the second year, maybe the third year I've been doing it, but it's growing and people really like it. I just have very tight parameters in that I don't donate blasters that have magazines as a rule because it's something else to keep track of. And I don't donate blasters that are battery powered because I don't want to donate to a poorer community something that comes with a repeat cost to use. Because I know what it's like to be there. So there's that. I will also actually November 1st and 2nd be at the I want to say it's Will County Fairgrounds. Not Will County. It's not Will County. Which county? Yeah, anyway, Peatone, Illinois, the fairgrounds at Peatone, Illinois, for LodgeCon, which is a family-friendly gaming event. I will be promoting Big Stompy Robots and the artwork that I do and items that my wife and I make for game-related stuff. You can see all of that and more there. So I hope to see you guys at any of these events. And with that, I hope you guys do your drills, keep your guard up, and keep your eyes open. Be kind to yourself and each other. And as always, thank you for supporting your local Swordmaster. I will be back next week. I'd really like the rest of my dinner. I'm quite hungry. But I have a social engagement immediately after this. Thank you, sir or madam. I don't want to assume your gender. But please subscribe. I'm sorry, I'm still not used to Twitch. So like, subscribe, whatever. Follow so that you don't miss. I do a lot of broadcasts on a lot of different subjects. My channel is almost more of a network for Twitch and Kick. I have 2 channels on YouTube because of their shenanigans about weaponry. I don't usually do the Historical Fencing Guild stuff on that channel. But thank you. You've been a wonderful member of the chat. I truly enjoy when I get educated and intelligent questions and commentary. So, guys, I will see you all. Actually, for the Twitch people and the Kick people, and actually, you're on the Nick Talkert channel. So I'll see everybody possibly. Let's see, it's Friday, so Monday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern for Nevermind the Furthermore, which is my author and creative support chat show where we talk about being an author, being an artist. We exchange accountability. What have we been up to? And for at least the month of October, I almost said August, but I caught myself. I'll be doing live art streams off and on through there, more than just my usual Wednesday shows, because I kind of want to stay sharp leading up to my big convention. So I will see you all there. Have a lovely night. Toodles, folks.